So thank you everyone for taking a moment to join us for today's webinar, Brain Building Play with Stream Learning. Thank you to Texas AEYC for helping us put this together. We're excited to kind of be with you today, and hopefully you all find some value in it. But before we jump in, a few housekeeping things. So we're going to be doing a Q&A at the end of this session for anyone that wants to stick around. If for some reason you do have a question while we're going, toss it into the chat or toss it into the Q&A, and we'll try to stop and answer some of those. If you happen to miss or need to jump off early, we will be providing a recording of this. We're also going to be providing the slides if you see anything that you like. So from a note-taking standpoint, we're going to give you a follow-up email with the slides. And then we do have an inspirational set of downloadable posters that will be given to you at the end here to hang in your learning environments, however you see fit. And we're going to talk a little bit about a promotion and partnership that we have with Texas AEYC that will not only benefit you as members of Texas AEYC, but also potentially your local chapters. And so to kick things off, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to share my screen, and then we are going to do some introductions really quick. So give me just a second. So we are with Pittsco Education. I'll give you a little bit of a background of who that is in a second. My name is Jake Rudisell. I'm the Early Learning Channel Manager for Pittsco Education. I help support a lot of things when it comes to early childhood education and elementary education for our organization. And for me, early childhood development has been the last decade of my wife and I's life with 4 amazing children. We've gotten to see the development of girls. My daughter, who is now 12, she was an only child till about the age of 5 or 6. And so we got to see the development of females. And then she got surprised with twin brothers who are now 7. So we got to see the development of multiples. And then their younger brother, who is now in kindergarten, came. So we've got those 4, and early childhood development and child development has been our life for literally the last decade plus. And that's how I connect with the community around me, like you all, is through the experiences that I get to see with my children in their school and their daily lives. So with that, I'll kick it over to Aubrey.
Awesome. Good morning. My name is Aubrey Vance. I am a former elementary school teacher. I taught everything from kindergarten to 6th grade at some point in my 11 years. I'm actually out here in Salt Lake City, Utah, but I did go to high school in Houston, Texas. I lived in Katy for many years with my family. So I get to, at Pittsco, I get to do things like this. I get to also deliver professional development for teachers and work with schools to help them figure out what solutions are their best fit. And sometimes I even get to write the curriculum. So I have a few different hats, but I'm excited to meet with you guys today and talk about early childhood education and what it looks like with STEM.
All right, Joey.
Hi, I'm Joey Mendoza. I'm the South Texas Education Advisor based in Corpus Christi, Texas. Joined Pittsco about 120 days ago, so excited to be part of this team. I'm passionate about learning acceleration through STEM, through enrichment, and all things related to pre-K through 12. My background stems from being a teacher, coach, and admin. Also have experience with regional centers, so I'm here to help, here to support. I'm a phone call and a drive away. Again, I'm in Corpus Christi, Texas, so serving the Austin South region and then everything out west to El Paso.
Got it. Thank you, Joey. So real quick, and to give you a little bit of a rundown of what we're going to be doing today, I'm going to give you a very quick background of who Pittsco Education is, just in case you haven't heard of us before. Take me just a couple minutes, and then we're going to dive into some activities with Aubrey. So Aubrey's going to be doing a presentation on an activity that you can incorporate into your classrooms and your programs, your early childhood programs, when you get off the call today. So we want to give you that. And so real quick, if you haven't heard of Pisco Education before, our mission is something that I'm assuming is very similar to what your all's is on this call, and that is leading education that positively affects learners. And so when we say leading education, you kind of picked up through our introductions that we are a STEM education company. We'll talk a little bit more about our longevity of how long we've been around, but we've been around before STEM was ever an acronym. And so our main mission is to provide hardware, curriculum, professional development that positively affects learners. If it doesn't provide a positive impact on a learner's learning journey, we don't even consider it as something that we're going to be able to provide. So we have to be able to do that. And so real quick, our goal, hopefully again, similar to your all's, our goal is to make it easy for educators and administrators like you to bring quality materials and curriculum to a learning environment that fosters a love for lifelong learning and ultimately prepares learners of all ages to be engaged citizens when they grow into be adults, right? And part of that has a little bit to do with successful professionals. So we want to provide them with the opportunities and skills to be able to not only know what opportunities are out there when they become an adult, but also to develop the skills that will allow them to be successful when they arrive in the world that they're going to grow into. And so what does that look like? Just to put into perspective what we do, I mentioned we've been around for more than 50 years. So Pisco was founded in 1971, so we're going on 52 years. And over that time, like I said, we were STEM before it was ever an acronym. One of the biggest things that you'll learn about Pisco that works very well in early childhood education is we are what we would call hopelessly hands-on. And so we exist and believe that kinesthetic learning opportunities is the key to not only engaging all learners of ages and ability levels. We believe that it provides that equity and access that all learners can engage with, but we also believe it's the key to unlocking the potential of all learners, right? So not only do we believe that it's a way to engage all learners, we believe that it is a key way to develop key 21st century skills that are very relevant and transferable outside of just STEM subject areas. They're skills that if they develop those at a young age, they can transfer that to just about any type of problem solving or problem identification across all subject areas. So what does it look like over the last 50 years? We serve, we hope and we impact roughly 3 million students per year annually in over 60 different countries around the world. We really strive to develop partnerships and be a consultant to help solve the needs of educators. And so one of the things that we're really proud of is when we develop a relationship with an educational institution, we typically will have a long-term relationship with them. And so for 20 years, 44% of the people that are working with us today have been working with us prior to the year 2000. So there's just a little bit about us. We do focus on professional development as well. As you can see, annually, we give professional development to up to a little over 800 teachers annually. And then we really do focus on the real world aspects. So you'll see Joey mentioned pre-K through 12th grade. If a learner went through our entire curriculum, they would be exposed to over 1,000 different career pathways throughout their learning journey that they could learn a bit about. So that's a little bit about Pisco Education. I am going to dive right back into some fun. So I'm going to kick it to Aubrey. And Aubrey, let me know when you want me to just show your camera.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. So first of all, I've been watching the chat. As you guys have questions or comments, if you'll just throw them in there, I know Jake and I will be keeping an eye on it. A couple of questions people have asked about certificates. Yes, there will be certificates available afterwards. And then someone asked if they were muted. Yes, you are muted. So don't worry if you have those kids in the background. Awesome. So I wanted to show you guys a simple activity that you can do with kids of all ages. Kids love to see what floats and what sinks. And so we're going to build on that and do one of the classic hands-on activities for STEM. And this is, I call it float your boat. So we're basically going to try to see how we can build a boat that will float, but there's a little twist. We want to give a challenge. So we're going to do this activity, and then I'm going to show you how you can build it into a STEM lesson. So first of all, you're going to build a boat. Students are going to build a boat from a piece of aluminum foil. I generally say it's like a 12-inch by 12-inch piece of aluminum foil. You can change the size. It doesn't really matter how big or how small. You're going to then place the boat into the water, and then you're going to load it up with people or objects to simulate people joining into the boat, and you're going to see how many people you can fit in your boat, or if you can get all of your friends on board. So the situation I give to my students when I taught was, you and your friends are on this great vacation and you are loving being on the water, you're playing, you're snorkeling, you're doing a little, boogie boarding, you're having a great time, but then all of a sudden your boat springs a leak. You look around your boat that you're on and you find some materials that you can build a boat that will be a life raft for you guys. And you build it, and then you see how many of your friends you can save. So your goal is to save all of your friends. So in my situation here, so Jake, if you want to flip over to just me and pin it. So in my situation here, do we have it? My pin perfectly.
You should be pinned.
Okay. All right. So let me angle my camera down to show you the setup I have. So I have just a container of water. This can be just about any size container of water. You do want to try to have a clear one so that kids can see when the boat sinks or floats. And then I have a piece of aluminum foil that I have made into a couple of different boats, just to kind of give you an example. We're going to test this one out first. And then my objects that I'm going to put on the boat can really be a variety of things. I have these really heavy washers just because that's what I have around my house. And it will also make for a quick demonstration because you'll be able to load it up really quickly. Other things that might work could be coins. It could be like the math manipulatives that are the little bears. It could be animal figurines, army men. Really comes down to what do you have around and what would make a good story. I love to use actually golf balls because they're big, they're easy to load up, and it's very visual. So, but today I've got washers around. So I'm going to put them in my boat. You can load it or the kids can load it. And I have saved one person already. I have saved 2 people already. And let's see, I have 3 people. Oh, and my boat has sunk. It is only going to save 2 people. When that 3rd person comes on the boat, then all goes down. Okay, and this is a little teacher tip for you. This boat is going to be more successful. I would not tell my students this, but this boat's going to be more successful because it's going to have a bigger surface area and the weight can be distributed. So I put my boat in there. It's more of a raft, but that's okay. And then I'm going to put my weights on. So I have 2 people. I have 3 people already. We are saving more people than the previous boat. I have 4 people, 5 people, and then this last one is 6. And then we took on just a little bit of water, but we are floating along, and we have now saved all of my friends. So this is a really quick, fast activity that you can do. And Jake, you can share the screen again.
All right.
This is a quick, fast activity that you can do that gets some really great results for STEM. So because the kids are engaged, the kids are able to have that open-ended task as they do the challenge. Yeah, so that's the activity. Now let's talk about 3 tools that you can do to build out that lesson and make it more of a STEM lesson, because that's a hands-on activity, but we're not quite STEM yet. So the very first thing would be make the connection. So there's lots of different acronyms for STEM. We have STEM, We have STREAM, where you incorporate in the reading and the arts. We have STEAM, which is where you just incorporate in the arts. I've also seen STEM with 2 M's, where you have medical attached onto it. So there's lots of different acronyms, but for today, we're going to talk about STREAM because reading is so important in the early childhood space. So if I am doing an activity like that, I want to be able to make connections back to things that the students have already learned about or that they're going to learn about, or real world application. And there's a couple of reasons for this. First of all, it's helping students understand that what happens in the real world is also going to be connected to what I have in school. So my topics that I'm learning in school, there's a purpose for me to learn them, and also helping them take some very abstract concepts and seeing real world applications, making them a little bit more concrete. So for example, with this activity of float your boat, we have science concepts. So we have buoyancy, we have float and sink. So if you're talking about, hey, this object is very buoyant, and describing what buoyancy is, but then you show it, now they're starting to make that connections, and now they're starting to recognize, how can I make my boat more buoyant? And they're able to incorporate in that vocabulary. So as we're doing this, I would love for you guys to start thinking about what connections between STREAM and the activity we just did. So I'm going to explain these areas a little bit to make sure we're all on the same page. But as you start to see some connections, throw them into the chat to make sure we're all on the same page. So first of all, technology. Technology, to most of us, we think of the new and shiny things, the iPads, the smart boards, the AR, VR, those kinds of things. But technology really, when you think about the fundamental definition of it, is really the application of human knowledge. What we've learned in the past, we apply to the present to make things better, and that's technology. So an example of technology with this one would be the Titanic. We learned a lot from the Titanic about safety procedures, about how to prevent ships sinking like that again, about maybe not boasting too much about how amazing our boat is. So these are all things that we've learned in the past that we're now applying to the present to make things better. Okay, reading. Think about, how can reading be applied to float your boat activity? What kind of reading concepts would the students use? What kind of math concepts would you be seeing? And then art. What kind of art concepts are going to be incorporated into Float Your Boat? If you guys will take maybe 30 seconds and throw a few ideas into the chat about what connections could you make to what the students are learning in your classrooms, in your activities, in your lessons, and what could it be connected to the Float Your Boat activity? So throw some ideas into the chat as to what you might think.
Hey, Aubrey, while we're waiting on some of those, I might go ahead and call real quick. I see Melissa Ramirez has her hand up. So Melissa, if you have a specific question, you can toss it into the chat, or if you would like, I can let you. It looks like she took her hand down, so I don't think she recognized that. So we've got from Martha Palmer, math and addition operations. We've got Leah. Problem solving, getting them interested in asking why questions, dimensions, shapes of the boat, depth perception, a lot of really good things coming on the chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we also, Janine Garza, I see that your hand is up. Do you have a specific question? I see you put graphing and what materials will float or sink will be some learning objectives. So no specific question from Janine.
Awesome. So I'm looking through these chat ideas. These are exactly what I'm trying to get you guys to think about, is what are they doing in their classrooms that can now be connected to a hands-on activity? Because that's when these lessons really start to sink in and help them understand these very abstract concepts, putting some actualization and some concreteness to. The engineering one, the reason that we have it in the middle of this diagram is because engineering is really going to be the application of all of these. So I'm going to read, I'm going to learn about boats, I'm going to learn about buoyancy, I'm going to know about art and what makes things beautiful and what makes things attractive to people to buy. And I'm going to take some math concepts and I'm going to apply all of these, and I'm going to create the answer to this challenge. And so that's where that engineering component comes into. So I did see somebody asked if we would have access to the slides afterwards, and yes, we will share out these slides with you. Okay, Jake, will you advance to the next one? So that's our very first tool, is going to be making connections. Our next one is going to be the 21st century learning skills. And we call these the 4 C's. You can probably guess why. They all start with a C. And so as students work on and practice these skills, they're not only going to be able to play nicer on the playground or get along better in the classroom, but they're really preparing these skills for further in their education, for their future jobs. If you think about it, people don't generally lose their job because they don't have a certain skill set. People generally lose their job because they don't play nicely, or they're not a hard worker, or they're not able to contribute to their company in a way that would be beneficial. So by teaching these kids the 4 C's and by practicing them, they're going to be able to be better prepared for the future. So if we think about our float the boat activity, whether you're building a boat by yourself or whether you're doing it as a group, you're working on that communication and collaboration. You're bouncing ideas off of each other. You're talking about, well, I remember this worked one time, but it didn't work this time. So what can we do to change this? And so having kids being able to communicate their ideas, as well as being able to share, to listen to ideas and collaborate and to build off of ideas and to accept feedback. Those are some really important skills. So no matter what STEM activity you're doing, it needs to incorporate these concepts and giving them opportunities to practice these skills. So it may mean that you have a really short activity about, hey, this is how we receive feedback. We don't get offended. We realize that they're just trying to help us. We give positives and negatives. And now we're going to practice it. We're going to build an aluminum foil boat, and we're going to receive feedback from each other. And so these are some really important ways and time usage to help kids develop these skills. Additionally, the critical thinking and creativity. Oh, go back one, Jake. I'm not quite done. Sorry. So critical thinking and creativity, the students are going to be able to think outside the box. They are, this is why open-ended challenges are so important with STEM, because if you just tell them exactly what they're doing and how they're going to build it, then they're really losing that opportunity to develop those skills in order to dive deeper into their thinking, as well as to practice their creativity. I taught 5th and 6th grade for many years, and by the time kids reach about 4th grade, they lose a lot of their creativity because they don't have opportunities to practice it regularly. So the early childhood elementary space is critical for practicing and developing that creativity and helping them understand it's okay that you don't think like everyone else. It's important, and it's a valued trait to be creative. All right, Jake. All right. Our last skill is going to be the engineering design process. Now, this is a simple engineering design loop. We do have one that's a little bit more developed later that we'll see for the early childhood space. But this is basically, you're going to brainstorm, you're going to think of some ideas, you're going to pick an idea to create, and then you're going to evaluate. When I look at my activities I've done with my classroom, the evaluate phase is the most important aspect, in my opinion, because if you think about it, companies thrive on evaluation. Let's look at Apple. When they first released the very first iPhone in 2007, they had an awesome product. They knew they had knocked it out of the park. It was flying off the shelves. People loved it. People raved about it. But let's say Apple stopped there and they're like, we've got an amazing product. We don't need to develop anything else. What would have happened to Apple? It would have tanked. Somebody else would have said, hey, we can actually make your iPhone better. We're going to take a product and we're going to make it even better. And so one of the core fundamental values of a company is to look at what they're doing well and what needs to improve, and to do better, just create more, create better, have an opportunity to grow their company. And so the engineering design process is critical for kids to understand that failure is not a problem. It's part of the process. Evaluating whether you have done well or you didn't do well is a critical component. And so with the float your boat activity, allowing students to go back and make modifications to their boat. They may need to start again. They may need to create a new boat. They may need to look at what worked with other people and then to modify their boat based on that. So those are our three areas, three tools. We have creating connections or making connections, the 4 C's, where we develop those skills to interact with one another, and then the engineering design process to ensure that students are constantly making things better or thinking about how they can make it better. So I want to wrap up my section with this quote here. It says, employers say problem identification or articulation best demonstrates creativity, while school superintendents rank it 9th. Superintendents rank problem solving first, employers rank it 8th. So basically, this quote is saying that the employers value problem identification more than problem solving. But in the schools, we have a disconnect. We say problem solving is more important than problem identification. If you think about the real world, you can't solve a problem until you've identified it. So it makes sense that companies and employers are looking for people who can identify problems before they can actually solve it. And so creating hands-on STEM activities for the students where they have to not just solve the problem, but also identify it, which is kind of where that engineering design process comes into play, and those 4 C's, because they're going to collaborate and they're going to discuss with one another, and they're going to evaluate and say, hey, our boat did this, but it did not do these things. They're identifying the problem, and then they can start the process again of solving it. All right, Jake, back to you.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to move forward with a few other things. If there's any questions based on some of the information that Aubrey just gave, again, please toss it in the chat or raise your hand. But as we move forward, one of the things that we want to talk a little bit about is the why, right? Aubrey just kind of gave you the how and some background on what we need to focus on in our classrooms. But I know, myself included, many of us on this call, we've probably asked the question to our educators throughout our time of why do I need to know this? When will I have to apply this, right? So one of the things that PITSCO really tries to focus on and believes in is to really make that real world connection and give you all the equipment and the information to be able to answer that question as to why is it important to have these skills developed at a young age, and why is it important to allow children the opportunity to experience these type of subject matters, right? So if we think about this on the screen, it says today's kindergartners, preschoolers, young children, they'll be tomorrow's leader. And so how can we prepare the littlest learners for a future that we can't even predict? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some stats that you can see of what really makes that future so unpredictable and what is it going to look like, right? So I'm going to hop through here. If anyone has any questions, again, toss them in the chat. So when we say we don't know what the world's going to look like, we want to take a look into the future. And so the stat that I have on the screen here is talking about technology, but as Aubrey mentioned, technology can be a number of different things. So when we're going through these stats, don't just look at it as the new shiny pieces of technology. Look at it through the lens of innovation, right? I think we all recognize the world around us is changing at an extremely rapid rate. And unfortunately, some of the things that happened, good and bad, through the pandemic that we just got through, it's rapidly progressing that even further in a shorter amount of time. And so what does that look like for our students, right? So there was a study done in 2017 that estimated by the year 2030, which is just 7 years away, that by 2030, nearly 40% of the jobs that were currently held by US workers at that time will be automated. And so that can be a very scary and staggering stat. But the reality is we're seeing it in our world every single day. We have self-checkout lines at all of our retail stores now, right? We have different types of automation in our home and on our smartphones and so on and so forth. And so one of the things that we want to pay attention to is the skills development that we'll talk about in a little bit that Aubrey was referencing, right? We want to be able to make sure that we provide learners an opportunity to develop key skills so that they can solve problems that technology and automation can't, right? So as early childhood educators, administrators, parents, grandparents, guardians, adults in general, looking out for the best interest of our children, we need to give them that opportunity to help be creators of technology instead of just consumers of technology, right? And so the next stat we'll talk about is even if they don't go into a STEM style career path, and I know there's a lot of debate on when is too early to start talking about careers. I think that we all can recognize that, again, as adults, parents, guardians, educators, grandparents, we want to prepare them for a place in the world that they get there. And whether that's a STEM career path or not, the reality is at this same time in 2030, it's estimated that there's going to be 500 billion devices in the world connected to the internet, which is a staggering number of devices. And so when we're looking at just equipping learners with the tools to succeed, say, in a career path so that they can become an engaged citizen, we can also take that back down to just being able to exist in the world when they get there, right? Because when we look at this stat, we can start to think about our lives, and we have heating and air systems in our home that connect to Wi-Fi, and we can control from our cell phones, right? We have refrigerators that are now being able to place orders at retail stores, right? There's a ton of connected devices in our homes, and giving them the opportunity to experience that will be critical for them to just be able to live in the world, right? Because it's going to become even more of a regular thing in their lives moving forward. And so again, I'm focused a little bit on computer science here, but keep in mind, there's a lot of stats that talk about STEM in general. And again, if we're talking about engaged citizenship and giving them the opportunity to develop interests in these areas, and then also develop skills, we can see that there's going to be opportunity for them in these fields when they get to become adults. So for the state of Texas alone, so the reason we included these stats is the state of Texas just updated a number of computer science academic standards at the K-12 grade levels that's going to require more integration of computer science and technology into the daily lives and daily academic days of a young learner. And when you ask yourself why would a preschooler start working on early coding? Well, we're focused on developing key skills, but the reality is if we can foster those skills at a young age, it's going to give them that opportunity when they get there. So you can see here in the state of Texas alone, there's over 50,000 computing jobs available, but the state of Texas is only graduating 5,500 students and learners that are available for those jobs. But you can also see STEM career fields, as you've heard before, they are very high demand and high paying. So again, if we want to give them an opportunity to be successful and support themselves and their families, this is an opportunity that we can develop some interest there to where we can ensure that they have skills and they have interest in a high demand area. But the problem is that there's a skills gap. So Aubrey just mentioned a little bit about the 4 C's, right? And so again, if we weave that blue thread from a child, early childhood all the way up to adulthood, when we think about what an engaged citizen looks like, an engaged citizen does look like a successful professional who is contributing to society in some way, regardless of whatever career path that is. As you grow up to be an adult, part of the gig is you've got to go find a job, right? And you've got to have those skills and contribute to society in some way that provides a positive impact and a positive outcome. But the problem is that we don't have enough people that are available that have those skills. And so as you can see with this stat that was a source was Edge Research focused on career and technical education, 82% of respondents said that young people are entering the workforce that are not equipped with the right skills. And so the next stat that I'm going to show you really quick is going to kind of close that loop from the skills that Aubrey was talking about, but then also the skills that employers are looking for. And so for this one, it was a Society of Human Resource Management study in 2019 that stated that 75% of HR professionals were having troubles finding qualified candidates. And they also believe, 50% of them believe, that that's going to continue to grow if we don't foster these skills at a young age in young learners. And so coincidentally, what you'll see is on the top 3 missing soft skills, you see problem solving, you see critical thinking, you see innovation and creativity, and you see ability to deal with complexity and ambiguity. So right there, we can see that the skills that are the 21st century skills in the 4 C's that are a set of base skills that can be transferable across a lot of different subject areas and topical areas in life are in demand right now. And so one of the things that I like to kind of talk about for those that are focused on, let's just say preschool right now, and those that are maybe in kindergarten through 2nd grade right now, I would venture to guess that most of the kindergarten teachers that might be on this call, if you ask them, would you rather receive a student that knew how to recite their ABCs 1, 2, 3s, or would you rather have a student that knows how to work well with others, that knows how to communicate from a verbal standpoint and from a listening standpoint, right? That knows how to be creative and think critically when they're approaching a problem, right? I would venture to say if we took a poll, the majority of educators would say, hey, I would rather have those core set of base skills developed, because if we've got those developed, the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s are going to be ingrained and absorbed much quicker with those core foundational skills. And so the reality is with this, we can start very early at developing those skills when we recognize that birth through 5 and birth through 8 age group is the most critical point from a brain development. So we can essentially, for lack of a better term, hardwire these skills into these young learners that is going to set them on a path for success. And so to kind of talk a little bit about that, how young can we start, right? And the reality is, as Aubrey mentioned, young children are naturally curious, right? They love to tinker, right? They love to test and fail and try again and build resilience and be able to, regulate their emotions if they can, and then try something new, right? They love to touch and feel. And so to kind of put this into more of a concrete aspect, in 2014, NSTA released a summary of several national reports that basically said that young children have the capacity for conceptual learning and the ability to use the skills of reasoning and inquiry that are very vital in scientific exploration and STEM in general, because they want to learn and investigate how the world works, right? And so the reality is, if we're waiting until upper elementary grade levels, or if STEM, STEAM, STREAM is just something that they just get once a week, we're missing a big opportunity to develop skills that they can use in those other subject areas. So what we would encourage you to do is find anything you can to weave these types of experiences, these hands-on experiences and open exploration experiences into your core subjects that you're working with. Aubrey mentioned reading a book, right? I think this month is National Librarians Week, or this month or this week is National Librarians Week. So let's read a book and let's pull some STEM out of that, right? And we can do an exploration based on the story that we just read, right? And so we would encourage you to do that. The other thing that I want everyone to recognize is, and I know that we know this, right? If we expose young learners at an early age, we will set them up for success in not only school-age programs and then 2nd grade and beyond, but it'll grow with them. And so a 2016 study of more than 7,000, almost 8,000 children from K-8 showed a correlation between early knowledge about the world and then later science success. And so one of the things that we need to try to focus on from an early age standpoint is to break down those biases, right? We all absorb biases as we grow. We might think because of a socioeconomic status or background that we might be living in, whether it's our race, whether it's our gender, we start to develop biases that tell us that we can't do something. And I have a slide in a little bit that's going to show something that can disrupt that. But the reality is, if we start young, we can start to generate and develop those interests, and we can let children know that they can and not that they can't, right? Before they start to develop those biases, like Aubrey said in 4th grade, a lot of the children start to lose their creativity. So if we can start young and give them that opportunity to tinker and test and fail and then basically succeed and be resilient, they'll recognize that there is nothing that they can't do as long as they put their mind to it. And so just to, again, put some stats back behind why it's important. So there was a study in California recently that showed that students, particularly female students, have a high aptitude for different types of subject areas and careers that traditionally, if you look throughout the history of time, are career paths and interests that don't have a high representation of females. And so when you look at the top bullet, it was a study and high school and middle school students combined have nearly 11 times more aptitude for careers such as advanced manufacturing and then computer science. But when we go look at the landscape of what that looks like across the US, women and minorities are underrepresented in those career fields. And part of that is if we can get them feeling like they're capable of it and interested in it at younger age groups and younger age levels, we can break down those biases before they start to get ingrained in our children and allow them to be able to follow that and have success. And so I'm kind of through with the stats, but I'm going to talk just a little bit more about just early childhood STEM and what it is, and then I'm gonna finish with a few giveaways and those types of things that we're gonna give you some resources to get this going. But I think the first thing or the last thing that we want to touch on is just recognizing that when you look at what a quality early childhood lesson looks like, right? When we look at a lot of the pedagogies that are out there surrounding early childhood education, it looks eerily similar to what a quality STEM lesson looks like, right? It allows students to foster these 21st century skills. And as Audrey mentioned too, to break down that stigma that failing is a problem, right? Failing is part of the process. Failing is where true learning happens, right? And so we believe that STEM, STEAM, STREAM offers that authentic ability to really engage with it. And to be honest with you, if you're not doing hands-on when it comes to STEM, STEAM, STREAM, right, then we're not doing the exercise and the lesson justice, right? So the reality is recognize that this is a journey, right? This is a journey through these skills that they're trying to develop, and it really allows them to be able to progress along that journey and recognize that everyone learns at a different pace. But to keep trying and build resilience. This is one of my favorite slides that we have because we talk about how STEM is noisy, it's messy, and it's exciting, and it's rewarding. So when we look at those words and those descriptions, it sounds very similar to an early childhood classroom. And again, it goes back to the idea that a quality STEM, STEAM, STREAM lesson looks very similar to what a quality early childhood lesson looks like. Right. So any way that you can find to take some of the key aspects that Aubrey has given you today to incorporate that into your lessons, we encourage you to do so. And most of all, it provides that safe place where children can fail and learn to live into their potential, right? Regardless of where they come from, regardless of what they look like. STEM, STEAM, STREAM is a way to provide equity across all ability levels and all age levels, and really give that real world type experience where they can make the connection, right? Because if we can make the connection outside of the classroom, it's going to carry more meaning inside the classroom. And so before we open up for Q&A to kind of come and go, I'm going to give you a few different things. So mentioned after this, we are going to be giving you an email. We're going to have the slides that you have here so you can reference those stats. We're going to have a certificate, I believe, so that you can use this for professional development. We're going to have a recording of this, and then you're going to get a poster that's similar to this that focuses on the engineering design loop. So you can download that, print that off, put it up in your classrooms, and anytime you're thinking about a lesson, you can go over there and you can take a look at what that design loop looks like and make sure you're touching base on all of those. And so I'm going to round it out real quick with a few other things, talk about a partnership that we have with Texas AUIC. I'm assuming that most of you all on this call are members of Texas AEYC. If you are not, we would encourage you to get in touch with the individuals over at that association. And one of the benefits that you will get as a member working with PITSCO is we have a partnership program that's called a Success Grant. And so for you all, it's going to benefit you in your classrooms, but also your local chapters. So if you use the promo code Texas AEYC 522, you will get a 5% discount off of any items that are in our early childhood catalog. And on top of that 5%, PITSCO provides an additional percentage of your purchase back to the Texas Association for the Education of Young Children. And then that helps to fund the Evelyn Wright Moore Chapter Success Grant. And essentially what those funds do is they funnel back into your local chapters to help with any type of outreach events that you are doing, membership activities, and so on and so forth. So it's a really unique program that helps to really provide success across all areas of the partnership, you all and your local chapters and the state level. The code is TXAEYC 522. And if you go to pitsco.com, you can enter that in the checkout. There's also information when you get these slides, you can connect with myself and Joey. We can provide, if you are a public district that needs a quote for your procurement processes, we can also apply it on there so that you can see it in documentation. And our contact information is also on the slide. So if you have any questions, we can help from that standpoint. So the last thing too, I want you to recognize with PITSCO Education is we really do strive to be a partner with anyone that we work with. And so we are not just going to be a transactional piece that is selling a part or a piece. We want to help you build out a program. And we do that from an evaluation process. You tell us, hey, here's what we would hope to do, and we have no idea where to start. The great thing about us is we don't just have the parts and pieces. We also have the curriculum that goes with it. And we also have support services like individuals like Aubrey that can help with a professional development standpoint. And we also have technical support that is available year round as well, if you ever have questions on how to work with us. And so as I end, I would encourage all of you to together, let's make STEM about those aha moments, right? Let's make them the victory smiles and the wonder ifs. I heard someone ask, hey, this would encourage students to ask those why questions, right? Let's get them to wonder, right? Because they're naturally curious, right? So if we do this together, we can make STEM the catalyst for authentic learning, something that's not scary, right? And students will be learning when they're having fun. And I think that's something that we all strive to do. If they're having fun while they're learning, they don't even recognize it. And we all recognize and understand that the impact that something like that has on retention when we get them engaged. So with there, I am going to forward to the last slide that has Joey and I's contact information. Anyone can connect with us however they see fit if you have questions. And then the last thing I'll do for the last couple minutes here, I'll go ahead and open it up for Q&A. Go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question, and I can allow you to talk, or you can toss it into the chat. I'm going to stop sharing my screen really quick. Give me just a sec. All right, Aubrey, I'm going to unpin you. There we go. Okay. So it does not look like we have any hands up. So we'll stick around for just a little bit. In case anybody does have questions, we're happy to answer those. Aubrey's activity, any of the industry stats that you want us to talk more a little bit about. Again, a reminder, within the next day, you will get an email from PITSCO Education that will have a bunch of resources in there. We encourage you to take a look at that. And we thank you for joining us today. Aubrey, anything else you want to add before we hop off?
Nope. Thank you so much for coming, guys.
All right, we do have one question. How do you balance the need for technology and the need for social emotional development? So, Aubrey, I don't know if you want to touch a little bit about that. I have something. Do you have any thoughts?
I think so everything in education kind of comes down to what's the most what's the objective of that lesson? So you can integrate all you want with STEM, but really with STEM, there's going to be one main focus. So for like our float your boat, that's very much a science activity. You're very much focusing on buoyancy with that activity. And so when it comes down to how you're balancing technology and social and emotional development, it making sure that the students' needs are being met. If that's the social emotional development, if you're mostly concerned about that with your classroom, then that's what you focus on in that lesson. And maybe you don't integrate as much technology because it's not going to benefit them the long ways for the long span of time. Or maybe you really need to teach a technological component, and so the social emotional learning kind of takes a back seat to it. So it's all kind of about that balance and what is your main objective for that lesson.
All right. Let me hop back up there to see. I thought there was another one. There's a bunch of chats in there, so I'm trying to get back to where.
And I'm flipping through them as well.
All right. Also, Texas licensing restricts how much technology can be used. Yeah. So here's the other thing I would say to that. One of the things that specifically Pittsco Education focuses on is integrating technology in a responsible way. So when we're talking about technology in early childhood, we have solutions and we can point you in a direction that allows you to integrate technology without putting a screen in front of the child. So for example, we have, when we talk about like computer science, we have early coding solutions that you need absolutely no experience prior knowledge to use, and does not have to be incorporated with a device, right? And so for us, and like Aubrey said, we view technology in a way to look at where we've been, look at where we're at, and look at where we're going, right? So we really try to put a focus on technology in a responsible way, and not just throwing them in front of a screen with some app to where they're really just consuming it. The other thing I will say about Pittsco Education is, I mentioned we believe kinesthetic learning is the key to unlocking, equity, engagement, potential, right? And so everything we offer has to have a hands-on component. Okay, so it's not going to just be a screen-based only. So keep that in mind. All right, Aubrey, did you see any others?
Can you give an example?
An example of so that's Cindy. Can we give an example of what?
Without a laptop.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So if you can see my screen, I'm going to show you a couple of things real quick. All right, so we have some really unique robotics and early coding solutions here. So we've got Kubo and we have Bebot. Both of these are pieces of technology that work on early 21st century skills development, while also providing an opportunity to understand how a computer programmer thinks without being scary and making it seem like I don't know what I'm doing. So for you all early childhood educators, one of the things we always talk about is you're experts in early childhood education, right? You are not necessarily, some of you might be, but oftentimes we don't find early childhood educators or elementary educators who are STEM, science, technology experts, right? And so we can help with that, but here's two pieces that show you do not need a device to be able to do that. We're going to use storytelling and obstacles and a lot of things to be able to code these robots from point A to point B, right? And so another thing that I can show here is Kit, who is a learning companion. It's a piece of technology, it's a robot. It is non-connected, and it doesn't do anything other than assist the teacher with differentiated instruction and being able to engage learners with technology. So one of the things Kit can do here is we can bridge the gap between the classroom and home. So I always use an example of Kit can take audio, video, photos, but let's just say to get some family engagement going on, we're going to tell our parents or guardians that the letter of the week is B, the color of the week is blue, and the number of the week is 5. So we're going to take Kit home with us, and we are going to work together as a family to take 5 pictures on Kit, because that's our number of the week, of things that start with the letter B or incorporate the color blue. And that can be in our home, outside our home, in our neighborhood, our community. But again, it's a way to get technology, and it's a humanoid robot, which is something that they're going to start seeing in the very near future every day. It's a way to get something that is very like science fiction and very high tech into us without having a screen, right? So a couple examples there, hope that helps. How cool is Kit? It's super cool.
All right. Roxanne asked, how do we break the bias without them being oblivious to the world? I think that just goes back to that whole balance thing. So giving them that exposure, giving them multiple exposures, giving them opportunities to have hands-on, giving them opportunities to collaborate and to communicate, and balancing all those things. So a little bit of everything to help them understand more about the world, but also preventing some of those biases from forming. So it's just that multiple exposures, multiple times, allowing them to communicate and build those social emotional skills alongside it, really kind of reduce those biases while also helping them have exposure to the real world kind of aspect of things.
So one other thing I would add to that, Aubrey, and this is something that Pitsco does when we're creating and developing curriculum for our solutions, is we really place an emphasis on trying to show equity and access to all different walks of life. And so a lot of times when we're developing curriculum in early childhood and elementary grade levels, we will go find or create a story, whether it's a character that we create on our own, or we do some research and we go find a minority in a STEM field and we tell that story, right? And so that they can see themselves. Let's say if we're predominantly, Hispanic, African-American or female or whatever it might be, we might be able to go find some stories about, let's just say it's a NASA astronaut, right? That connects with them from an ethnic background, right? So we can show them that, hey, if they can do it, you can do it, right? So that's another way to be able to connect that and break that bias down, is to start showing them, because they're out there, right? We all have those things, and we know those people who have been successful regardless of where they come from, regardless of what they look like. And so that's one way to get that real world connection, to show, hey, here's something that's happening in real life, but make it relatable to them as well and their background. All right, any other questions?
I don't see any.
Okay.
If you have thrown a question out there and we missed it, please throw it in again. Otherwise, thank you for being here, and thanks for listening to us.
For sure. Yes, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And again, keep an eye on your email. If you have any other questions, there's going to be ways for you to connect with Joey and I to get those questions answered. Thank you so much.
Yep. Have a great day, guys.
Bye.